One peaceful evening, as I sat next to my 22-year-old son, Ethan, I noticed him inching a bit closer, subtly looking for comfort in my nearness. I could tell he was craving some reassurance and support. Yet, I felt there was something heavier weighing on him, something he wasn't quite ready to put into words. I'm Sarah, 42 years old, and I've been raising Ethan on my own since his dad, Michael, took off for a long work assignment overseas. Ethan and I have always been tight. But that night, I picked up on a new undercurrent in our bond, a quiet mix of uncertainty and fragility we hadn't faced before. If someone you love is wrestling with emotions they can't quite name or share, what would you do? Have you ever been caught between following your gut and showing compassion? I'd love to hear your take, drop it in the comments. That November afternoon, the house was bathed in a soft, golden light, faint and wavering, much like how I was feeling inside. I stood by the kitchen window, slowly stirring a mug of chamomile tea, a small habit I'd picked up to keep calm lately. Since Michael left for his work trip, now dragging on past 6 months, the house felt emptier, missing its usual hum. Gone was the tap-tap of his keyboard from the study. No more of his random whistling as he strolled into the kitchen each morning. It was just me and Ethan now. At 22, Ethan was still at home, juggling part-time college classes and evening shifts at a local bookstore. The little boy who used to stick to me like glue during grocery trips had grown tall, reserved, and often shut his bedroom door, like it was a gate to a world I no longer belonged in. I knew Ethan was a good kid, nothing was wrong with him. He was courteous, dependable, and never gave me any trouble. But that very quietness seemed to pull us a little further apart each day. Our dinners, when we had them, were mostly filled with the sound of forks and knives clinking on plates, not the warm chatter we used to share. I didn't hold it against Ethan, but a soft sadness crept in every time I walked past his closed door. That evening was no different. You home for dinner tonight? I called out toward Ethan's room, folding napkins in the dining room. After a beat, his voice came, soft but clear. Yeah, probably. I'm off early. It was a short reply, typical for him, but it didn't quite ease the quiet ache building in my heart. I missed Michael. Missed how he'd pull up a chair every night to share little snippets from his day. Missed how he'd look at Ethan and say with a laugh, "Can you believe how big he's gotten?" Now, with just the two of us, the quiet didn't feel restful anymore. It was more like an empty space, both of us trying to fill it without saying a word. Dinner that night was simple: veggie soup, some bread, and a small salad. I set the table, not expecting much talk, but to my surprise, Ethan showed up right on time. Heard about this internship thing in Chicago, he said, taking his first sip of soup. I looked up, caught off guard by him opening up. Oh yeah? What's your take on it? He shrugged, eyes on his bowl. Seems alright. Haven't made up my mind yet. Chicago's a long way, I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. But if it's what you're excited about, Ethan gave a small nod, his gaze meeting mine for just a second. We went back to eating, but in that quick moment, I felt a subtle shift, like a tiny crack had formed in the wall between us. After cleaning up the dishes, I stood by the kitchen counter, staring out at the backyard. The night breeze was swirling dry leaves across the grass. It hit me that maybe I wasn't lonely, maybe I'd just gotten so used to the quiet that I'd forgotten how to hear the small things hidden in it. Around 8 p.m., I was curled up on the couch, halfway through a chapter of my book, when Ethan's door creaked open. Usually, he'd just grab a drink or head out. But this time, he wandered into the living room, clutching a mug of warm milk, a childhood habit he still hadn't shaken. Trouble sleeping? I asked, keeping my voice gentle. Ethan settled into the armchair across from me, setting his mug on the glass table. Probably studied too much this afternoon. My brain's still buzzing. I gave him a soft smile, marked my page, and set my book down. It wasn't often Ethan came out to chat like this. When I was little, he started, his eyes drifting somewhere far off, if I couldn't sleep, you'd let me rest my head on your lap and rub my back till I dozed off. My heart caught, not just at the memory, but at the tender, open way he said it, like something vulnerable was peeking through. I shifted a little, smiling warmly. It's been a minute since we've just sat and talked like this, huh? Ethan let out a quiet laugh, set his mug aside, and sank back into the couch next to me. I was a bit surprised, but I stayed there, offering gentle words and a steady presence, like no time had passed at all. The room felt softer, like a cozy blanket had settled over us. The lamp glowed warmly, the curtains swayed lightly in the breeze, and the clock's ticking was the only sound still moving. I didn't say much, just sat there, giving him quiet comfort with my presence. After a bit, Ethan murmured, "I'm scared that when Dad comes back, things won't feel the same." I looked at him gently. "What do you mean by that?" He paused for a moment, then said, "I've gotten used to him being gone. I'm not sure I want things to go back to how they were. I'm not angry at him. It's just, you and me, we've made our own life." I gave his shoulder a soft squeeze, understanding what he meant. In the quiet of Michael's absence, we'd both found our own ways to cope. And sometimes, when you've lived in someone's absence long enough, their return can stir up more than their leaving ever did. "Whatever happens, Ethan, we've got each other," I said quietly, almost in a whisper. He gave a small nod, his shoulders easing like he'd set down something heavy. We sat like that for a good while until I gently nudged him toward bed. Ethan got up without a word, but before he left, he turned and rested a hand on my shoulder. "Thanks, Mom." Those 3 words, so simple, warmed my heart as his door clicked shut behind him. I lingered on the couch, reflecting on our conversation and the warmth we'd shared. Sometimes, the deepest bonds grow from the smallest moments, when someone lets their guard down, and you respond with gentle understanding. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room's wooden floor where I'd fallen asleep on the couch. My book had slipped to the ground, its pages splayed open as if waiting for me to dive back in. I rubbed my eyes, wincing at the dull ache in my back from sleeping upright all night. But what brought a smile to my face wasn't the golden light or the birds singing outside, it was the rich, comforting aroma of coffee drifting from the kitchen. I shuffled toward the scent, my socks scuffing softly against the floor, and found Ethan at the counter, pouring a second mug. His back was to me, but the familiar sight of him moving around the kitchen felt like a quiet gift. "You're up early," I said, my voice still thick with sleep. He turned, offering a small grin. "Figured I'd get a head start on the day." I leaned against the counter, watching him set the mug in front of me, steam curling up like a warm invitation. That moment, simple as it was, felt like a thread pulling us closer, stitching up the quiet gaps that had grown between us. We sat at the table, the morning light spilling over us, and I couldn't help but notice how Ethan's hands moved with a new steadiness, like he was settling into himself. "I was thinking about what you said last night," I began, cradling my coffee. "About being scared of things changing." He looked at me, his eyes soft but searching, and nodded. "Yeah. It's weird, you know? I want to step out on my own, but part of me still wants to stay right here, where it's safe." His honesty caught me off guard, like a breeze slipping through an open window. I'd felt that same pull myself, wanting to hold tight to what was familiar while knowing life was tugging us forward. "I get it," I said, my voice gentle. "I've been scared of losing you to your own path, but I'm learning that loving you means letting you find it." Ethan's gaze held mine for a moment, and I saw a flicker of relief, like he'd been carrying that worry alone. We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling, just feeling. Outside, the world was waking up, leaves rustling, a neighbor's dog barking faintly, but in our little kitchen, it was just us, 2 people navigating a new season together. Later that day, I found myself in the backyard, pulling weeds from the flower bed Ethan had been tending. The earth was cool under my fingers, and the work felt grounding, like I was rooting myself in something steady. Ethan stepped outside, a glass of water in hand, and sat on the grass nearby. "You're really going at it," he said, a teasing lilt in his voice. I laughed, brushing dirt from my hands. "Gotta keep up with you, don't I?" He chuckled, and for a moment, I saw the boy who used to run through this yard, chasing fireflies while I watched from the porch. "Mom," he said after a pause, his tone shifting to something softer. Do you ever think about what it'll be like when Dad comes back? The question hung in the air, heavy but not sharp. I set my trowel down, wiping my brow as I considered my answer. I do, I admitted. Sometimes I wonder if we'll all fit back together the way we used to. But I think, maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe we're building something new instead. Ethan nodded, his eyes on the horizon, and I could tell he was turning those words over in his mind. We worked side by side for a while, not saying much, just sharing the quiet rhythm of pulling weeds and smoothing soil. It felt like more than gardening, like we were tending to something deeper, something growing between us. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized this was what love looked like now, not holding on too tight, but standing together, giving each other space to grow while staying close enough to lean on. That evening, as we washed up from the day, Ethan lingered in the kitchen, drying dishes while I put them away. I think I'm going to look into that internship in Chicago, he said, his voice steady but laced with a hint of nerves. My heart gave a little lurch, but I smiled, nodding. That sounds like a brave step, Ethan. I'm proud of you. He looked at me, his expression a mix of gratitude and resolve, and I knew we were both learning how to let go, how to hold on, and how to love through the changes. If this story resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share a piece of your own journey, big or small. And if you believe in the quiet power of connection, hit that like and subscribe button to join us for more stories. No one should walk through life alone, and every story deserves a listener. I stepped into the kitchen and spotted Ethan, his hair still a mess from sleep, messing around with the coffee maker while toasting a couple of bread slices. The sight warmed my heart, making it flutter for a moment. Morning, Mom, Ethan said, not looking back. Thought I'd treat you to breakfast today. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded with a grin. Well, isn't this a rare day, you brewing the coffee? Ethan flashed a smile, sliding a steaming mug my way. I actually slept pretty well last night. His words were simple, but when I caught his eyes, I could feel something changing, like a quiet tide turning. He wasn't my little boy anymore, he was a young man, grappling with new feelings and questions about where he fit in the world. As we settled at the table, I asked gently, "You been thinking more about our talk from last night?" Ethan paused, his fingers brushing along the edge of his mug. Then he gave a small nod. It's not really Dad being gone that's got me feeling lost. It's trying to figure out who I am without always depending on you. His words hit me softly, like a leaf drifting to the ground in fall, gentle but stirring something deep inside. I knew that feeling well. When Michael left for his long work assignment, I'd faced something similar. For 2 years, I'd been both mom and dad, and in all the hustle, I hadn't realized how I'd started losing sight of myself too. You don't have to have it all sorted out right now, I said, keeping my voice steady. But I'm sure that as long as you keep taking steps forward, no matter where they lead, I'll always have your back. Ethan glanced up, his eyes a little shiny. I'm worried that if I go too far, you'll feel alone. I gave him a smile, one that carried both warmth and a touch of sadness. I've known loneliness for a while, Ethan. But you've filled that space, not by sticking close every second, but by growing, by chasing your own path. A soft quiet wrapped around the kitchen. Outside, late-season petals floated down, marking the shift to a new season. In my heart, something was shifting too, a balance between holding on and letting go, between shielding him and trusting him. Ethan got up and carried the dishes to the sink. Before heading out of the kitchen, he turned and said softly, "You know, Mom, I'm thinking about living a bit more on my own. Maybe picking up another job or finding my own place for a while." My heart tightened for a second, but I didn't let myself hold on too tight. I just nodded gently. As long as you stay true to who you are, I'll always be here, your home to come back to. Seasons changing always bring a bittersweet haze, part grief, part hope. In our little kitchen, with just the two of us in a house that once held 3, Ethan and I were stepping into a new chapter, where love isn't about being close all the time but about growing and understanding each other. After Ethan left that morning, the house felt even quieter. I stayed in the living room, my fingers tracing the rim of a now cool coffee mug. His words about wanting to live on his own echoed in my head. I was so proud of him for growing up, but that pride came with a hollow ache, vast and chilly like the late fall air. I got up and wandered to the small study by the back porch, where Michael and I used to sit on weekends, sorting bills or reading side by side. The room still smelled of old wood, with soft light slipping through the dusty window. On a high shelf, I noticed a small wooden box, the one Michael left before he went away, saying to open it only when I really needed to. I'd never touched it before. But that morning, with a new season stirring in my heart and a wave of loneliness rising, I reached up and carefully pulled it down. My hand shook as I lifted the lid. Inside, I found letters, old photos, and a notebook filled with Michael's familiar handwriting. "For you, when you need to remember why we started," it read. I froze, my breath catching. Each page held his neat, careful words, tender, just like he was. He wrote about our college days, about that rainy night in the library when I finally let him hold my hand. Another page described the day Ethan was born, his writing shaky, the ink smudged from his trembling hands after meeting our son. "My love, if you're reading this, something heavy must be on your heart. But don't forget, you're the strongest woman I've ever known. You gave me a home, became a mother, a friend, and the keeper of our light through all my time away. If Ethan ever puzzles you, remember we were like that once too, figuring out how to love, stumbling but giving it our all." I closed the notebook, tears slipping quietly down my hands. For the first time in months, I let myself fully remember Michael, not just as the dad who was gone, not just a shadow in an empty room, but as the man who loved me with everything he had. I stepped into the backyard, where a few stubborn lavender shoots, planted by Ethan years ago, still clung to life. The breeze brushed through my hair, soft as a memory's touch. I closed my eyes and whispered my gratitude to Michael for the life we'd shared and to Ethan, my son, who was finding his own way. Memory isn't just in photos, letters, or old notebooks. It's in Ethan's smile, the warmth of his voice, the way he looked at me that morning, hesitant but strong. I knew being a mom was never simple, especially when it meant learning to love while letting go. Sometimes, to really see memory, you have to reach for it with courage and a heart that's learning to mend. That evening, I made a simple dinner, vegetable soup, Ethan's favorite since he was a kid. As he walked into the kitchen, the warm smell floated around us, pulling me back to days when he'd sit sketching at the table while I cooked. We didn't talk much. It was just a calm meal, but in that calm, something was shifting. After dinner, Ethan helped with the dishes, then headed to the back porch bench. I brought out 2 mugs of hot ginger tea and handed one to him. I sat beside him, and we gazed up at the night sky, where stars twinkled in time with the breeze. "Remember that summer camp when you were 11? I asked, my voice soft but full of meaning. Ethan grinned. "Yeah, when I got lost in the woods, and you were running around like a madwoman looking for me." We both chuckled, not a big laugh, but a real one, like a gentle stream clearing away the distance between us. "That's when it hit me," I said slowly, "that everyone you love will eventually face moments you can't shield them from. All you can do is give them the freedom to choose their path." Ethan turned to me. "And you're really going to let me go?" I nodded. "Not to walk away, but to find your own path. I'll miss those days when it was just you and me, though, miss them something fierce." Ethan gazed at me, his eyes thoughtful, nodding slowly as my words sank in, reminding me of the gentle boy he used to be. "I'm scared of things changing too, Mom," he said softly. "I'm so used to being close to you, knowing you get me without me having to say much. But I know I've got to figure out how to love in a more grown-up way." "We're figuring it out together, sweetheart," I said, my eyes misty but my smile steady. "Learning to grow up while keeping our hearts soft." The night breeze whispered through the trees, making the leaves quiver gently. In that tender air, we sat side by side, not as a mom weighed down by responsibility and a boy tangled in uncertainty, but as 2 people learning to give each other room to grow, to step back without losing each other, bound by a quiet, unspoken connection. There were no big promises or life-changing decisions, just a quiet choice to honor our feelings, to keep our hearts open, and to stay in each other's lives in a new, more mature way, still full of love. A soft rain fell through the night. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I didn't pull the curtains open right away but settled at the little writing desk by the window, where Michael used to read every Sunday morning. Instead of a warm coffee mug, I had a stack of blank paper and an old fountain pen I hadn't touched in years. I started writing, "Dear Ethan, if you ever read this, it might mean I found the courage to share it with you. Or maybe I'm just writing to ease my heart a bit. I'm not writing because I think you need me to explain anything. You're grown now, sharp enough to pick up on things that don't need saying. But some feelings don't come out in everyday talk, so I'm putting them down here. I'm writing to share a piece of myself I've never said out loud. Since your dad left for his long work trip, there've been empty spaces that felt too big to fill. I've gotten used to handling things on my own, and having you here has been my anchor. But being used to something doesn't mean loneliness doesn't creep in. Some nights, I longed for someone to tell me it'd all be okay. And then there you were, not saying it, but showing it with your quiet presence, the way you listened so closely. Sometimes, I worried I leaned on your kindness too much, that I might have put too much weight on you. But then I realized it's not anyone's fault. We've been navigating tough times together, loss, change, and learning to understand each other. I'm so proud of you, a young man with a heart that listens. And if you ever feel our closeness is too much, remember this: love isn't a tether. It's an open door. When someone truly loves you, they'll hold that door open for you to step through, no rush, no blame, just hoping you'll live true to yourself. I set the pen down, my hand shaking a little from the emotions welling up. I folded the letter and slipped it into the desk drawer, unsealed, unnamed, just a piece of my heart on paper, enough to calm the storm inside me. That evening, Ethan got home late. As he passed by the study, he caught me reading by the window. Our eyes met for a brief second. No words passed between us, but that glance said enough. Something had shifted, not in our bond, but within each of us. In that moment, the silence wasn't a gap anymore. It was a soft bridge, quietly pulling our hearts closer. A week later, the sun finally broke through after days of gray, rainy skies. Golden light poured through the windows, warming the porch where I was wiping down my little potted plants. I took a deep breath, feeling a gentle calm settle in my chest. Ethan stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of hot lemon tea. He handed one to me and sat in the wooden chair beside me. We didn't say anything at first, just listened to the birds chirping and felt the early sun's warmth on our hands. I read something odd yesterday, Ethan said, his voice quiet and easy, like he was talking to the breeze. It said sometimes when people lose something familiar, they start loving what's left in the strangest ways. I tilted my head toward him. What's that mean to you? He took a small sip of tea, eyes on the garden. I think our bond's gotten stronger because we've held each other up through hard times, and it's pushed us to learn how to love each other as people, not just as mom and son from old memories. I sat still, his words sinking in, not an accusation or forgiveness, but a quiet, bittersweet melody ringing through the calm of the afternoon. Were you ever mad at your dad? I asked, my eyes steady on him. Ethan let out a long breath. Yeah, but I figured out if I held on to that anger, there'd be no space left for the people still here. I looked at him, seeing Michael in the calm, wise way he spoke, not in his face, but in his heart. What tightened my throat wasn't the resemblance, though. It was knowing Michael never sat with me like this, truly listening. I gave Ethan a warm smile, reassuring him. I know I've leaned on you more than I should have. I support you because I care, because I'm so grateful for all you've done, Ethan said, giving me a gentle nod and a warm look. But I care about you too, Mom, truly. In that moment, under the clear morning light on the porch, we weren't just a mom and her grown son. We were 2 people, once hurt, once toughened, once lost, learning to sit together in peace. A story doesn't always need a big turning point. Sometimes, a small moment, like sunlight touching a trembling hand, like a heart easing because it's been seen and understood, is enough to feel like a fresh start. Spring came late that year. The backyard branches were just starting to bud when I folded the last wool sweater and tucked it into the storage box. I stood, wiped my hands on my thin apron, and gazed out the window where Ethan was working on the old flower bed Michael used to care for. It had been over 2 months since our last porch talk. 2 months isn't long, but it was enough for me to start learning how to stand on my own, even with Ethan still nearby, a young man who'd quietly grown, steady and silent like trees along a quiet road. That evening, as we sorted through the storage room, Ethan picked up an old wooden box. He sat cross-legged on the floor, opened it, and let out a soft laugh. "Dad's first letter to you," he said, his eyes bright as he held up the yellowed paper. I paused, then sat beside him. "Your dad was the kind of guy who'd sit down and write letters by hand," I said with a soft smile. Back then, just that was enough to make my heart skip. Ethan skimmed the opening lines of the letter, then passed it to me. "I think this belongs with you, Mom." I took it, my hands trembling just a bit. The letter held pieces of my past, but its sting had faded. Now, it was like a quiet chord in the song of my life, something I didn't need to erase, just something to set free. That night, with a cool breeze slipping through the open window, I pulled out a fresh journal. On its first page, I wrote in steady strokes, "A new day to start again." I poured out my thoughts about the quiet mornings, about Ethan and the little shifts he was navigating, about a home that no longer held Michael but still pulsed with warmth and life. I wrote to remind myself that love doesn't always need big moments. Sometimes, it's just a shared meal, a quick hug at the day's end, or a knowing look that says everything without a word. As I set down my pen, I heard Ethan's footsteps coming closer. "I'm thinking about signing up for an evening music class," he said. "Not 'cause I'm great at it, but because I want to try something that's just for me." I smiled, my eyes shining with pride and warmth. "That's exactly what I've always wanted for you, sweetheart." Outside, the breeze shifted, and the young leaves quivered softly, like a whisper from the new season brushing the roof. In my heart, a corner I'd thought was empty started to bloom again, not because the hurt was gone, but because love had found a new way to grow. Some hurts don't need to be wiped away, they just need to be held gently, with care and acceptance. Ethan and I didn't try to erase Michael or fill the space he left. Instead, we learned to carry on with those memories, loving each other in a new way, wiser, kinder, and freer. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about living with old scars without letting them shape who you are. And sometimes, the most beautiful moments don't come from big, bold starts but from quiet steps taken in a familiar home, with someone you love waiting just on the other side of the door. If this story stirred something in your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share a piece of your own journey, even just a small one. And if you believe in the power of connection and healing, don't forget to like and subscribe to join us for more stories. Everyone deserves to have their voice heard, and no one should have to walk their path alone.